think we got a first today on the Carolina Insider. I think we got our first mother-son podcast guest duo
I
ever.
think that's right.
Tylee Craft, of course, has been a guest here. And today we've got September Craft here with us. I think this is the first mother-son duo ever, so this is big news. We've been doing it for 7 years. First time we've ever had this before. Thanks so much for coming by and seeing us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I feel like everybody knows you as Tylee's mom.
Yes.
Tell us a little something about September Craft.
Okay, yes. My first name is September, and I was born in September.
Oh, there we go.
A lot of people ask that, but yes, I was born in September. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and I wanted to move back to New York, but I didn't want to raise my boys in New York, so stayed in Sumter, South Carolina. So, a deputy sheriff with the Sumter County Sheriff Office. I'm a lieutenant there over Warrants Division, and I've been with the agency for a little over 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously this has been a trying, not just year, this has been a trying several years for you and your family, and just take us through maybe a little bit just what life has been like here recently for you as you've tried to process everything that's been happening with Tylee and with your family in general.
Yes, when we first got the news that Tylee was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I asked Tylee, did he wanted us to come back home and get his treatments or stay here? And everybody was like, North Carolina, Duke, and UNC is the best places for treating cancer. Sure. So Tylee said no, he wanted to stay because he still wanted to be a part of the team and still participate in everything. And that's what we just did. We just decided to stay here in North Carolina. So it was troublesome. Let's keep going back and forth. And then me being a mom, nervous that if he gets sick, it's like a 3-hour drive. So then that's when we had Miss Claudette from the Secu House. She was like his second mom, and then Kat was like his second mom, and then Miss Sally Brown was his second mom, and then Miss Galloway was his second. So he had all these second moms. So I felt comfortable that my son was 3 hours away, where I just couldn't get to him that quick. That any one of them could get to him if need be. So it was a battle. Back and forth. I spent probably half of the time here in North Carolina back and forth with my back and forth from Sumter to here. So my job was very understandable. Yeah, they understood because they knew my boys. My boys grew up knowing a lot of the deputies and the sheriff and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like family there with them, and it's family here.
When you hear that word, when your son tells you, "Mom, I've been diagnosed with cancer," you hear it from the doctor for the first time or whatever it was, like what goes through your mind? How did that hit you?
Well, when that happened, Tylee came home in like November time of 2019. I think it was like October or November, and he was saying his back was hurting, his lowest back was hurting. So that was around that time. And then December of 2019, he came home like 2 days before Christmas because they had a bowl game in Charlotte. So they had to report to Charlotte by a certain time, but that was on Christmas Day. So Tylee was laying on the floor playing with my grandbaby, and he was saying that his back was hurting. So that was like Christmas Day. So he left to go to Charlotte, had the bowl game, I think, like December 28th. I'm assuming it was like December 28th, and then like January time, he said his back was still hurting a little bit. Then February. And I was like, okay, they need to do something. So go ahead. And they started treating him. They was giving him muscle relaxers and stuff. And then it wasn't getting any better. So then they took him to a chiropractor. And that's doing different treatments at the facility. So he was saying, Mom, it's not getting any better. So in March, I think it was like March 9th or 5th or something like that, I called the athletic trainer and I said, hey, take my son to the emergency room. And Tylee was like, Mom, I don't feel like going. I was like, get your butt downstairs with your cell phone and your cell phone charger and get in a car. So he took Tylee, and I said, I'm leaving work because I had work security that night. So it was like 9-something at night. So got home, took my uniform off, jumped in the car, called my cousin. I said, hey, you ride with me? He was like, yes. Drove there. So it's 3 hours. So we got there around like 12 a.m. So Tylee was already in the back room, sleep. And he already said that he haven't been sleeping good and he couldn't sleep in his bed. Sometimes he would sleep on the floor to try to get comfortable. So because he was sleeping, I didn't bother him. So the athletic trainer was like, okay, well, call me if you need me. He left. So like I said, it's like 12 something in the morning. me and my cousin sitting there talking. Then the ER doctor came in around like 3-something in the morning, and he said, "Okay, we ran all these tests on him. We did a CAT scan of his lower chest and his abdomen area, and he said, I'm sorry to tell you," he said, "your son got stage 4 lung cancer." And he just said it like that. So of course I screamed out. I'm crying. And I woke Tali up by me screaming out. And so I went over to his bed, holding him, and he was like, "Mom, what's the matter? What's the matter?" And he said, "You got stage 4 cancer, lung cancer." He said, "You got stage 4 cancer." Even though he said lung cancer, and he said, "I'm an ER doctor." He said, "I cannot tell you that it's lung cancer. You have to get a biopsy done." He said, "But I've been doing this for several years." And he said, "I know that it started from in your lungs." And he said, "Do you want to see?" So he pulled it up on a monitor, and it had like a 6-centimeter mass on his lungs. And so we could see it. And then he said, "It already spread to your spine, and it already spread to your liver." So when he showed us the liver, he said, "This is where your back pain is coming from." He said, "It's not coming from the little bulging disc that you have." Because that's what the facility was treating it as, because they did an MRI a couple of weeks prior to this. So they said, "Oh, that's where your back problems is coming from." But they said, "No, it wasn't that." He said, "Your liver is impacted with cancer." And we saw all these, look like thousands of spots all over his liver. And so he said, "That's where your back problems is coming from." So he said, "We're going to admit you." And in the morning, he said, "There's going to be 3 different cancer doctors that's going to come in to talk to you." So that morning, they all 3 introduced themselves. And then they said, "Well, you're going to have to get a liver biopsy done today. It's going to take 5 days to come back." So he said that when it come back, only one of us is going to come in here, and then you'll know what type of cancer you have. So that lung doctor came back in and said that, "You remember me, Dr. Wise, and blah, you have stage 4 lung cancer." And he said, "If you have not came in here," and he said, "within 2 weeks max," he said, "you would have died." He said, "You was already dying," because Tali lost like 30 pounds. And I was like, how nobody noticed that he lost 30 pounds,
Right.
And he was just in so much pain. He was still running passes, catching passes, and just in pain, still working out, and was still pushing through it. So, but he said if he didn't come in, he would have been passed in a couple of months. Wow. So he was like, "You need chemo ASAP." So he was like, "This is when you're going to start your chemo." And then Sally had chemo like in a couple of days.
When it's 3 in the morning and you're 3 hours from home and your son's laying there and you know something's wrong with him, but it's going to be hours before you really know like what you can actually do. What is that time like?
Well, that's why I had my cousin ride with me, and we was just talking about different things. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be like kidney stones or something like that, because he keep complaining about his lower back. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm thinking. Never, ever did I ever thought that it was going to say stage 4 lung cancer. So the doctor said that this is something that started growing ASAP. So the only thing I could think of is started growing around like October, November of 2019, because he was diagnosed March 14th of 2020. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. 2022, I'm sorry, 2022, yeah.
I want you to tell us some about what you learned about Tylee after the diagnosis, but I think so many people know Tylee as like, oh, Tylee who's fighting cancer. Tell us about Tylee, your son from ages 1 to 19 before all this ever occurred.
Let me correct something. It wasn't 2019 where he had the back problem. It was 2021, because it was like that year before, right. 2022 when he was diagnosed. Okay. But Tylee was, growing up, Tylee was always like the smart child. I have 2 boys. Tylee's oldest brother is 25, and then Tylee, 23. So it was oil and water. Y'all know how that go when it comes to two sons at that. So they was totally opposite. But Tylee was always basically like the goody 2-shoes, always made straight A's in school throughout the whole school year. And he always did what he's supposed to do. I didn't have to ask him to do anything. He knew his chores. He knew what he's supposed to do. He knew his responsibilities. Never had a problem with him. Never got in trouble in school. He was the type that really didn't study. Like, he sit there and listen in class and gasp everything that he could get, and then when it's time to take the test, he'll just do it. He'll come home and do homework, but he really didn't study. But Tylee lived, breathed, sleep, everything football. He would watch football all the time, and he just loved football, but he was always smiling for no reason. Like, Tylee, why are you smiling? Just smiling. He was always a happy person, and he just didn't let stuff bother him. You never really saw like a mean side of him. If it was like a little mean side, is because he probably maybe talking smack to the other player on the field or whatever. But that's it. That's it.
What did you learn about Tylee after the diagnosis that maybe you didn't know beforehand, if there was anything? Because it just seems like he was able to reach so many different people during this time period.
It was like hard. Only me or my cousin could read if something was really, really bothering him, but Tylee would not show that something was bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we sat there and waited for the doctor to come in to tell us, hey, this is how the CAT scans look now. And then, if the doctor say, okay, well, this part did grow some, so we're going to have to change your chemo. He didn't have a reaction like that, like to upset. I'm upset, and I'm just like, Lord, please help save my child. And
Sure.
I would not cry in front of him. I would just say, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. And then I cried in. But he knew what I was doing. I just didn't want to cry in front of him. But he'll just be like, okay, doc, when we going to start? And his response was like that. And the doctor said, well, we could do this one or this one or this one. And then Tylee was like, okay, which one would you put your child on? And then the doctor was like, okay, say no more. And then he said, okay, well, I'm going to start you on this. So it was like he just wanted to get this done. It's like Tylee just so much wanted to beat cancer. He wanted to beat cancer and start back eating, gaining his weight back, and getting back out there on the field. That's the only thing he wanted to do. And it seemed like the more he changed his eating habit and to think positive, praying and stuff, and it's like, I'm not saying it wasn't working, but the doctor didn't think that Tylee was going to make it past really like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And he made it past 2.5 years. So
how did he do that?
I think you have to stay positive, because a lot of people that has cancer does feel like, oh, this is the end of the world, and then they just get into this depressive mode, and then they always depressed and not do what they're supposed to do. Tylee stayed working out. He was already a healthy child because he was an athlete. So if you constantly working out and keeping yourself healthy, and then I had him cut out meats and sugar. When you have cancer, you don't supposed to eat sugar because cancer feed off of sugar. So I started reading up on different things. I put him on sea moss. Sea moss helps with keeping your immune system, because you got a low immune system when you have cancer. So that keeps your immune system up. I made sure he kept his vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, because that helps build up your immune system, especially because with his chemo, it would drop his red blood cells down. So if your red blood cells is down and your white blood cells is down, your body is immune to a bacterial infection and stuff. So it's been plenty of times that Tylee ran the temperature, and if he ran the temperature, I had to take him to the emergency room. And then when we sit in the emergency room, we'd be in the emergency room for hours, and then they may admit him because they have to draw his blood and do blood cultures, and it take 5 days for the blood cultures to come back. So they make you stay there those 5 days, because if it shows any growth on the blood cultures, they'll make you come back to the hospital. So say if they discharge you, and then 3 days later when the blood cultures come back, they say, okay, you got bacteria. Now you got to go through the whole process of going back through the ED, finding a bed for them to treat you with antibiotics and stuff. So they automatically started treating him with antibiotics just to be on the safe side, but it always came back that he never had any bacteria. It's just a part of that particular chemo that he was on that caused him to have a temperature. So, but he ate healthy as much as he can. Like I said, he took the sea moss. The sea moss builds his immune system, and then black seed oil helps with cancer, and that builds your immune system. And soursop is like a fruit. It looks almost like a green. But it's green on the outside, and it's kind of mushy almost, a little bit with black seed. And soursop is good for cancer patients. So I had him taking that, and then he didn't really like the taste of it, so I got it in pill form. So he was taking it faithfully every day, and he's been doing that for the past 2.5 years.
Even just hearing you, just the different things that the regimen that he's going through, that you're helping him with, how did you keep going during this time period? I have to imagine you're angry, you're sad, you're working, you're trying to keep your life going, you're trying to help him. How did How'd you do all this?
I just kept praying and try to be positive. Just try to be positive. And like Tali they have to be at the facility to work out like 5:40 in the morning. Tali would get up. And when I used to come, because we stayed at the Secu house the whole time we was here. And the Secu house has been amazing to us. And so while I was here, while he had treatments, I would come and stay with him and make sure he's okay before I get back on the road to go back home. And it's like I didn't always stay here. I just came up here and I took him to every treatment, every appointment, and then I just go back home. But Tali motivated me a lot. So when I saw that, hey, he just had chemo, and then the next morning, I know he's tired. And I'm like, Tali, you don't have to go. I got to go, Mom. So he'd get up early in the morning, 5:40, leave to go to the facility. And I'm like, well, since he's getting up, I'm going to get up, go to the gym. So every time he got up to go to the gym, if he worked out or didn't work out, he still got up and motivated the other players. And so I got up and went to the gym. So he motivated me, and I just stayed positive and strong because I just didn't want him to see me down. What's the point of me sitting here being down and out and giving myself a headache and making myself sick? I can't change nothing. The only thing I could do is try to help the situation and help him and be there for him. That's it. God already made his plan. God already wrote all of our stories. So just didn't know which one it was going to be for Tali, if Tali was going to survive and beat it or if cancer was going to take him out. And cancer took him. So, but I had to be positive. I had to stay positive for him.
I think so many times when someone has cancer, their friends and sometimes even their family aren't really sure what to do. They're not sure what would be helpful. It seemed like Tali's teammates really loved them being around and being part of this whole thing. What did people do that was helpful that maybe people who listen will know, hey, it's okay to do this if they run into this same situation?
Yes. Tali was once somebody, I can't really speak because I don't have cancer. The only thing I could say is that Tali saw my grandfather go through cancer, and we was there when my grandfather took his last breath. And then my aunt in New York, she went through cancer, and we went up there to see her a couple of times before she passed. So it's like, and then we had like other family members. So Tali saw this, and so sometimes Tali felt like because he saw other family members pass away of cancer that I'm not going to survive this. But I'm like, you got to speak it into existence. Don't say you're not going to survive. Say, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to survive. So Tali would just, anybody that he talked to, he would just say, hey, be positive and keep striving. Like, make like plans for the future. And I used to always, Tali was like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. Always speak into the existence, always speak into the future that this is where I want to be in the next 3-5 years. You know, so that's keeping positivity. If you stay positive and not be depressed, depressed kill you. Depressed will make you sick and stress you out. So if he stayed positive as much as he can and has always prayed, and I just keep telling this, pray, sit down and talk to God and pray. It's okay to question God. Everybody say, no, you shouldn't question. No, we are humans. Because I'm like, why do this to this child? Mm-hmm. Why? He was a good child growing up, didn't get in trouble. He did what he's supposed to do. Graduated high school early, went to college with almost his associate's degree, then got his bachelor's and master's degree. He was trying to go into the NFL. That's all he wanted to do. Go to school, get his degrees, and go into the NFL. And just live his life and travel. And he struggled and suffered these past 2.5 years, but he never gave up. He never said, Ma, I can't do this no more. I just want to quit. He never gave up. We probably got turned down from 7 different doctors that said that they couldn't help him no more. We even reached out to Germany and Australia.
Wow.
We've been to Texas, Miami, New York, Johns Hopkins, and Boston. We've been everywhere to try to help him.
So how did you arrive at the answer to the question, why do this to this child?
The only thing I could think of is that God already planned. He already made Tali, wrote everybody's story. Tali, and I had to sit back and say, why am I being selfish? It's not me getting stuck with the needles and going through the drug of chemo in my body and the radiation killing his brain and stuff. And it's not me going through that. That's Tali doing it. So why am I being selfish to try to hold on to him? if God is saying Tali has done all he can on this earth, and which he did because he impacted a lot of people before he even passed away. So I told myself, Tali already did what he's supposed to do on this earth. Everybody's put on this earth for a reason. Tali found what he's supposed to do by talking to people and letting people know it's okay that you have an illness. Keep pushing. And that's what he was doing. He didn't let cancer hold him down. Tali and I done sat there with Tali getting chemo for 4 hours. And then we'll leave, and he would like, Mom, drop me off at the facility. No, won't you go lay down? No, I got a test I got to take. I got an exam I got to take. And I'm like, okay. So he was determined to continue on to succeed. He was not going to let cancer stop him.
When you see the logo on the field and you see the keep swinging signs and you see the decals on the helmet, does that make you? Is there a little bit of happiness? Is it still sadness? I mean, what is that?
It's happiness and it's a little bit of sadness because it's like I wish he was here to see it. Mm-hmm. You know, even for him to like walk in and see the nutrition with Tali Craft Nutrition Center and him standing there and watching it, I would have loved to see that. You know, I'm glad I got the chance to see him walk across the stage to get his degree because Tali was feeling real bad that day. Mm-hmm. He was like, Mom, I don't think I'll be able to walk across the stage. And I said, won't you just rest? And I called his nurse and I said, Tali is in so much pain, he could barely walk. And she sent me to the emergency room. She sent me to the hospital to get some medicine for him. And then I brought it and gave it to him and told him to lay down. And I said, within a couple of hours to see how you feel. And he was like, okay, I can walk. So he said, I'm gonna walk. So I wanted to see that because Tali didn't walk for his high school because COVID hit. So they didn't really have a graduation because his year was 2020, even though he was already here in the year of 2020 because he was the early enrollee. But COVID hit, so they didn't have a graduation, and so I didn't get a chance to see him walk. So I'm like, I have to see him walk across the stage to get his degree. And he motivated me to go back to school. I said, I'm sitting here sounding like a hypocrite preaching to my kids, get your education, go to school. I said, I don't even got my daggone degree. So I said, let me go and get my degree. So I went and got my master's in 2019. And I'm like, I have to get my degree before my son go off to college and get his degree. So I got my master's degree. So like I said, he'll motivate you. You know, he'll make you think positive and be positive, you know. So, but it's bittersweet. I would have loved to see him, see his logo, that logo on the field. I would have loved to see him standing in front of the nutrition center with his name on there. But it'll just be something that I'll just come and visit every time I can.
I bet your kids don't give you any problems. Like if you told me right now to be in by 9 o'clock, I'd be in by 8:30 just to be on the safe side.
Sally didn't give me no problem.
Some of the others now that might be a little different
I got
story.
two, but that oldest one, man.
That Jones and I have talked in here. The day of the Georgia Tech game is the most emotional time I've ever seen at Kenan Stadium, and that's just from the outside. You were living it. When you think about that day, what do you think about?
That was that the day Tali passed?
Mm-hmm.
That when we was in the hospice room with him, sitting with him, and the whole thing was for us to come to the game anyway. We just didn't know that early in the week that Tali was going to be admitted in the hospital. And Tali went to a doctor appointment, and when the doctor came in, the doctor was looking, and she said, I think he's having a seizure. And it wasn't like he was shaking.
Right.
And so they rushed him to the hospital, and then they said that he actually had a stroke, and then the stroke caused multiple seizures. So he was admitted in the hospital, then they put him in ICU for like 2.5 days, and then they was like, it was nothing else that they could do for him. So of course, like my whole plan was to come to the Georgia game anyway, and it was so much family came down because Tali was in the hospital. So the plan was already to come to the Georgia game. So because Tali was sitting there in a hospice bed, and Tali wouldn't want me to be crying. He wouldn't want none of us to be crying. So because, you know, I have sickle cell trait, and, you know, your body can't be stressed because it'll make you sick. So I try not to be stressed. So I'm sitting there, and something that's told me that Tally went once or to be sitting here sobbing and crying and stuff. I said, let's all go to the game. So everybody's like, you sure you want to go? I said, let's go to the game because they was going to acknowledge Tally on the field anyway. So I said, let's go and let's represent for him, and then we could come back. The only thing I did was going to go there, be on the field during that time, and then come back. And so at that time, too, the lady said that the night before, she said that he's not going to make it past the night. But he still did. So I told them put the TV on. So they put the TV on with the game. And even though he wasn't like there,
Sure.
he was still, breathing. And so went to the game. They did the thing. And so, when I saw Coach Brown, because I told Coach Galloway, Miss Galloway, and Miss Brown, and we just said, don't tell the coaches that the doctor said that it's going to be a matter of time, because I want them to have a focused mind going into that game, and I didn't want the players to know either.
Sure.
So once we went out there, he said he knew something wasn't right because the way I was squeezing him and started crying. So Tally was still alive, but I was just crying because I know the doctor said that it's going to be a matter of time. So once we did that part on the field, I told my family, I said, I'm going straight there. And someone was like, okay, well, we're going to stay and watch the game. So I'm like, I'm leaving. So left. It was like a 25-minute ride back. And then that's when his aunt called because she stayed there. And I had her to stay with him because, she worked in ICU for 7 years, so she know what to do.
Sure.
So I felt comfortable staying there with him. And so she called, she was like, Sep, you need to hurry up and get here. She said, Tally's about to go. So by the time I came running down the hallway to him, he already had went. So I wasn't in the room when he passed. And I think Tally didn't want me to be in the room when he passed because the nurse already said that night before, she said, he's not going to make it throughout the night. And then she came back in like at 1 o'clock and we was all still in the room. And then she said, he's not going to go because of all his loved ones is in here. She said, y'all would have to leave the room and then he would go by himself. None of us budge. I'm saying, I'm not going to leave his side. We still stayed there. So Tally waited for all of us to leave to go to the game. And he passed in. But like I said, by the time I'm running down the hallway, and his room was the last one on the hall, he passed. She said something. He just took his last breath. So I went over there and hold him and cried until I got a headache. And then my oldest son, he came in and started holding us. So it was, and I just kept telling in his ear, I was like, you fought a good fight. You don't have to worry about the chemo no more. You don't have to worry about the radiation. So I'm like, you fought a good fight. And I kept saying, Mommy going to be okay. Mommy going to be okay. So, I wish he was here because, of course, I would love to see him get older, get married, have kids, live his life. I just always wanted to know if he would have ever made it into the NFL, So, yeah.
And obviously, an impossible situation, just all of it, the last several years, just incredibly difficult. No one should have to deal with it. You mentioned the SCCU house, the CQ house. How did the CQ house and Carolina football and like how do all those places help? Did they help with this situation?
They helped tremendously when Tally was diagnosed with cancer. I called his position coach and told him, I called the trainer that was there, and then I called the position coach, and then, of course, the football staff and some of the teammates came down to the hospital, and then Ms. Brown, she came, and she told me about the SECU house. Of course, I've never heard of it, and then they said, well, we going to take you over there. So one of the football staff members took me over there, and for me to look at it, and they said, this is the room that you'll be staying in with Tally. And it was like a kitchen and living room and 2 beds in there and stuff. So it was very nice. So because when he was first diagnosed and Tally said that he wanted to get his treatment there, and in my mind, I'm like, Tally still got his dorm room. I can't stay at the dorm room. So I'm like, oh, this is going to cost a lot of money, me coming for a hotel and stuff. So I'm getting worried. Then I started worrying about my job. So I was stressed. So for them to tell me about the SECU, I didn't talk to nobody. This was all going through my mind. So when they told me about the SECU house and we went there and they was like, you can stay here as long as you can. And I'm like, that, when I mean like a heavy weight was lifted off, I was like, oh my goodness. And then when I talked to my job, they was like, Kraft, take care of your son. Don't worry about back here. We got you. So that was like another weight lifted off. So it felt good that they really supported as much as they did. And then, you know, they have a parents group thing for the football moms and stuff. And every so often they would call and say, hey, do y'all guys need dinner? A different coach wife would come and bring us dinner. So Miss Sally Brown and brought us dinner a couple of times. Miss Galloway has brought us dinner a couple of times. So they was like, you don't have to worry about like always looking for money to feed you and Tali. And then at the SECU house, you know, you have volunteers that come in and bring food and stuff. So it helped out a lot. It helped out a lot. And then when somebody is first diagnosed with cancer at a hospital, they have different organizations. They'll come and give you like a $50 gas card and stuff like that. So I was getting that a couple of times. And then it was like one agency paid for like one bill. So they paid for my electric bill at home. Mm-hmm. So it was like they help. They help. So it was a burden off my chest. It was, and I loved them. I loved them all for it.
I know it feels like something is undone because there's that what was going to happen football future question that's not answered. Could it be that the whole point of Tylee playing football was to get y'all into this sort of family that could help you along the road with this thing he was going to encounter?
Me and Tylee had visited 10 different universities that was recruiting him. And I'm going to be honest, I got tired of going to these. I got tired of going on, but it's like just to see my son, you know, able to get like a scholarship, a 4-year scholarship and football scholarship and, you know, and doing something that he loved. So when we came to visit here, it felt different. And it really felt like, wow, we knew these people for years. And this was like our first time meeting him the first day Tylee came and visited the school. So then we visit the school on that Friday. That Monday, Coach Galloway called Tylee like 7:30 in the morning and on his cell phone. I'm like, who was calling you this early in the morning? I'm getting ready for work. He's getting ready for school. He answered the phone and talked to Coach Galloway. And Coach Galloway was like, hey, Coach Brown told me to call you and offer you. And Tylee was like, wow. So he said, I'll give you a call back and let you know. So like I said, I was on that Monday. Tylee came and told me, he was like, Mom, they offered me. And I said, so you going to take it? He said, I don't know. He said, I think. So then that Wednesday, he called them back and said, I'm going to take the offer. So it just felt like home. And we sat there and talked, and I said, well, you like the school. I like the school. It felt like home. It felt natural. And I said, I don't have a problem with you being here, because he didn't want to go to school in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. He wanted to adventure because he wanted to travel. So it felt like home. So I'm like, over these course of these past couple of years, it felt like they was family, and they are family.
When something like this is going on, people are checking on you every day, and everybody wants to know what they can do for you. But then when Tylee passes, people...
It didn't stop.
So that's what I was going to ask.
It didn't stop.
So what has it been like for you?
I think it's
then?
been more. I think it's been more checking on me, and it's been more, even like getting his homegoing service together and stuff like that. Everybody was helpful. Everybody was like just being there, so I wouldn't have to do a lot on my own. But then I did a lot on my own. I was just sitting there brainstorming. I was like, okay, this got to be done, this, and this. I got to get this. And then I just put a list down and started checking off things. I got to get this. And then all my family people kept texting saying, September, do you want me to do this? And I sent them all the lists and was like, I already got all of this done. I was like, I want you to do this. I want you to do this so that I could stop all the texting and stuff. Can you do this? Can you do this? But I have all of this here done. So I already knew like where I wanted to have his home going. I already knew what funeral home that I wanted to use. So all that stuff was already played in my mind. You know, I tried to talk to Talia about it a little bit, probably like last year sometime. I was like, if something was to happen, what do you want? Do you want to do this? He was like, Ma, you just take care of it. So he just said, and I don't know if that was a way of him not wanting to talk about it, or he just like, no, Mom, you take care of it. You just,
Right.
I trust you enough. You take care of it. So I was like, okay.
Nobody should have to have this experience as a parent, as someone going through it. If you had a piece of advice or something to say to somebody who, if they have a child who gets sick, or what would that advice be?
Well, first, and I'm be honest, and they don't have to have a sick child. That's in general. Everybody should get your affairs in order, especially for your loved ones, because you just never know what can happen. And I mean, like, if it's a will in place, life insurance, anything, have these talks like, hey, do you want to be cremated or buried? Do you want, because see, my oldest son, he's a veteran, so I already know that he would go to a veteran, you know, and I used to have talks with my boys all the time about me. This is what I want done. Ma, I don't want to hear that. You need to hear it.
Sure.
You need to hear it because, and it started years ago, but I'm a deputy sheriff. So anything can happen. And I was involved in a police officer shooting. So where my subordinate was shot right there next to me and died, and I had to do CPR and everything on him, and he died and stuff. So I was involved in that, and of course that made the news. So I hurried up and called Talia here at school, and I said, you gonna hear an officer was shot and killed in Sumter deputy? I'm okay. And I said, I'll talk to you about it later. And then I called my oldest son and told him. So because I didn't want them to see it come across their phone, and then they calling and getting scared. So I'm like, life is too short. Anything can happen. When that happened, that day, the next day I came back to work. I said, I'm not going to sit here and just twiddle my thumbs at home and looking at the wall because that's going to make you go crazy. I went back to work. They was like, Kraft, what you doing back at work? I'm not about to sit at home. So I say that to say it's like you got to keep pushing. So, you know, people was like, man, you need to quit. Like my family's like, you need to quit. For what? And I got to get back out there. It made me nervous for the first time because we was going there to arrest the wife and to a victim. And the husband was like, I'm not going nowhere, pulled out a gun and started shooting at us. So he went out like basically suicide by cop type deal. So he got killed too. And then the deputy that was with me got killed. But of course, me going back to work the next day, they didn't really have me doing anything. I just stayed around the office. But when I went back out to like serving warrants and stuff like that, it felt uncomfortable at first because that's me first time going back doing that. And even when I called on the radio, officer down, shots fired, officer down, everybody said I was calm. They heard everything I said. I wasn't panicking. And I said everything that went on. So I was as calm as I could be. But to tell a parent, just basically with anybody, make sure you have a will, make sure you have stuff in order, because I feel like if that time ever come when your loved one is gone, you don't want to be ripping and running, trying to figure out what to do. And like with my grandfather, when he passed, he was a veteran. So it's a lot of stuff that I learned dealing with that because he was on hospice at home. And, you know, my grandparents have 10 kids and majority of all of them live in New York. And then I'm a grandchild. And it's 35 of us it's 35 of us grandchild.
Gracious.
Yeah, it's 35 of us grandkids. And then Talia was a great-grand, so it was 33 great-grands. And then my grandbaby is great-great-grand. So I was the more responsible one in Sumter, helping and taking care of my grandfather's situation. So I just knew what to do and try to get stuff in order and say, this is what I want, this is how I want it done. So just have those talks with your loved ones about, hey, do you want to get cremated? Do you want to just get buried? Do you what color suit you want to wear? What color dress you want to wear? Yes, have those talks. Like I said, have a will in place. Have what is it called? A will in place. Life insurance. A lot of people don't know that a lot of stuff get caught up in probate, and that takes years. And by me being a deputy, I'll deal with some of that stuff.
Sure.
A lot of people don't know that on people banking accounts, somebody need to be a beneficiary over your banking account, because your banking account could get frozen until it goes to probate. So, like, this is some of the stuff that you need to know, and
Sure.
you need to talk about it. People don't like to talk about death, but you need to talk about it. Hey, what cemetery you want to be buried at? You know, hey, who you want to officiate your funeral? You know, so what you want me to put in the obituary? What pictures would you like? You know,
Sure.
So
What do we got to do to get invited to that Kraft family reunion? I bet y'all have fun. Don't you?
yes. I don't know. We need to have another one.
Just call us. We're ready.
Yeah.
I guarantee there's people listening to this who are thinking to themselves, September Kraft is impressive, but I am not as strong as her. What would you tell those people who don't think they have the strength in them that you do?
They have to be positive and look at themselves in the mirror and say, you could do it. You know, you could do anything if you put your mind to it. That's all. Let's look in the mirror and let's think of, like I said, people that's sick. Like Tali was sick, you know, but he still got up in the morning to go work out, throw up, and still proceeded on. And if you don't have no illness in your body and you sitting here telling me that you can't get up to go do that, can't get up and go work out, you don't have to be in a gym for 3 hours. You could do something, go walk. You know, your health is important, but this was a healthy child that had one of his cells in his body that started growing and growing and growing and came cancerous. And there was nothing he could do about it. I tell a lot of men, go and get your checkups. Especially a lot of men don't like to go to the doctor. Go and get your checkups because my grandfather had prostate cancer. So you go get your prostate checked. You have to. You feel the pain and you constantly keep feeling this pain. That pain been going on for weeks. That's not normal. Something is going on. Get it checked out before it's too late. So.
Last thing, at least for me. Do you think you learned anything? You individually learned anything during this process? Was there anything that you think has changed you moving forward?
Yes. One thing, like I said, if I feel any type of pain going in my body and I'm not going to let it constantly keep being a pain, I'm going to go get it checked out. Yeah, you know, you got to pay a copay and going to the doctor, and I understand that. And you don't want to get put on medicine. Let's try to eat healthy. You don't have to be on a diet. You could just eat small portions of stuff. You don't have to eat and gulge and stuff like you shouldn't. Just try to be as healthy as you can. Go walk. Just go outside and walk for a little while. I learned that to always try to stay positive, because as much as I had like control over my boys where I helped them with stuff and make sure they was always okay, took care of them, this right here, looking at Tali being on his knees, throwing up, and I couldn't do nothing. He laying in bed in pain. I couldn't do nothing. I felt helpless as a mom. And I felt alone. And then I'm sitting there like, and I'm like, Lord, please just put your hands on my child. You know, and at that point, I was like, Tali wasn't my child no more. I had to give him back to God. And I'm like, God, you got to take care of him. You have him. You know, he only gave Tali to me for a little while. You know, all of us that has kids, they are kids, but they not our kids. You know, so I just had to tell myself, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. What can I do? I can't stop it. You know, so the only thing I could do is prepare for it. And that's what I've been doing these past 2.5 years. I was staying positive, but I always had in the back of my mind, okay, what if he don't make it? You know, let's keep fighting so I can have my child as long as I can. And to the point that I said, I'm being selfish now. It's not me getting stuck. It's not me going through the radiation. I knew how he hated going through the radiation. I knew how he didn't like the chemo because it made him sick, and he couldn't taste his food. He couldn't even, the water tasted different. He says, like, I'm drinking metal. So it's like, it's to see that's something you suffering. Why would I want him to keep going through that? He was just suffering. So I'm like, I can't be selfish no more. So I miss him. I love him. I wish he was here, but like I said, God had other plans.